Drew Hamilton built an empire on perfection, but when bold creative director Zola Green walks in, she threatens to dismantle everything he stands for, and maybe his heart too. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Vibe House Media Company headquarters in downtown Atlanta. Drew Hamilton adjusted his designer tie as he gazed at his reflection in the glass. At 31, he had everything he'd ever wanted: a multi-million-dollar media empire built on perfection, beauty, and what he called aspirational living. "Mr. Hamilton, your 9 a.m. meeting starts in 5 minutes. His assistant Mia reminded him as she placed his morning protein shake on his desk. Drew took a sip and nodded. "Is everyone ready for the new creative director?" "What's her name again?" "Zola Green," Mia replied, checking her tablet. "Her portfolio is impressive. She turned around 3 failing brands last year." Drew barely listened. He was scrolling through Vibe House's latest Instagram post, frowning at the engagement numbers. Their once thriving digital platform was slowly losing followers to newer, more authentic competitors. That's why he'd finally agreed to hire an outside creative director, something he'd resisted for years. "Fine, let's see what she brings to the table," he said dismissively. As Drew walked toward the conference room, he passed the wall of framed magazine covers featuring him and his company. "The Image Maker," one headline proclaimed. Another called him "the man who sells perfection." He smiled, remembering the podcast interview that had cemented his reputation 3 years ago. "Some people call me shallow," he had said with a laugh. "But I know what works. Curvy women? They're beautiful, but not my thing. I like a woman who looks like she could model. Someone who photographs well, you know?" The comment had gone viral, causing a brief storm of controversy before fading away like all social media scandals do. It hadn't hurt his brand one bit. If anything, it had made Vibe House even more exclusive, more aspirational. Drew entered the conference room where his executive team waited, all of them fitting the Vibe House aesthetic perfectly. Trim, polished, and camera-ready. "Good morning, everyone," Drew said, taking his seat at the head of the table. "Let's welcome our new creative director and see if she can breathe some life back into our—" The words died in his throat as the door opened and Zola Green walked in. She was not what he expected. Not at all. Zola wore a perfectly tailored earth-tone pantsuit that hugged her full curves. Her dark skin glowed without a hint of makeup, and her natural hair was styled in an elegant updo. She carried herself with quiet confidence, her deep brown eyes taking in the room before landing on Drew. "Good morning," she said, her voice warm but professional. "I'm Zola Green. Thank you for this opportunity." Drew couldn't look away. She was beautiful, undeniably so, but she was everything his brand didn't represent. Full hips, curves, a body that wasn't sample size. Zola looked directly at him, a slight smile playing at her lips. "I know what you're thinking, Mr. Hamilton. I don't exactly scream aspirational, do I?" The room fell silent. Drew cleared his throat, suddenly aware everyone was watching him. "What I think doesn't matter, Ms. Green. What matters is results. Our numbers are down, and your job is to fix that." "That's exactly why I'm here," Zola replied, setting her portfolio on the table. She opened it to reveal a series of stunning campaign concepts. Vibe House is dying because it's stuck in the past. Today's consumers want authenticity, not perfection. Drew frowned. "Our brand is built on aspiration. And that's the problem," Zola said calmly. "People don't aspire to be perfect anymore. They aspire to be seen, to be valued, to be real." For the next hour, Zola outlined her vision for the company. Her ideas were bold, innovative, and worst of all, they made sense. Drew found himself both irritated and impressed. When she finished, the executive team was buzzing with excitement. "I'd like to start with a complete overhaul of the website," Zola concluded. "We need to showcase diverse bodies, diverse lives, diverse definitions of beauty." "That's not what Vibe House stands for," Drew argued. Zola met his gaze steadily. "Then maybe it's time for Vibe House to stand for something new." After the meeting, Drew retreated to his office, unsettled. He called in his longtime friend and VP of marketing, Jason. "What do you think of her?" Drew asked, pacing behind his desk. Jason shrugged. Her ideas are solid. The team loves her. But I know she's not your type. This isn't about types, Drew snapped. It's about brand identity. Is it? Jason raised an eyebrow. Because from where I'm standing, you're upset that she doesn't fit the mold you created. The same mold that's now costing us followers and revenue. Drew sighed, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair. Give her 2 weeks. If her ideas don't show results, we go back to our original vision. That evening, Drew stayed late at the office, reviewing Zola's portfolio again. Her work was undeniably powerful. Images of real people living real lives, captured with an artistry that made everyday moments look magical. He was so absorbed that he didn't notice Zola standing in his doorway until she knocked. Still here? She asked. I thought I was the only workaholic. Drew looked up, momentarily caught off guard. In the dimmed evening lighting, Zola looked even more striking than she had that morning. Just reviewing your work, he said, gesturing to the portfolio. And still think I'm going to ruin your precious brand. There was a challenge in her voice, but also a hint of humor. Drew leaned back in his chair. I think you're talented. I'm just not convinced your vision aligns with Vibe House. Zola stepped into the office, her presence somehow filling the room. I didn't come here for your approval, Drew. I came here to fix what's broken, starting with the lie that thin is the only aesthetic that sells. It's worked pretty well for me so far, he countered. Has it? Zola picked up a report from his desk, the latest analytics showing declining engagement. The numbers tell a different story. Drew stood, suddenly uncomfortable with her so close to his space. Fine. You have your 2 weeks. Show me what you can do. I'll need your cooperation, Zola said. No undermining me with the team. I don't operate that way. Good. She turned to leave, then paused. By the way, I heard that podcast. The one where you talked about curvy women not being your thing. Drew felt his face grow warm. That was a long time ago. Not that long, Zola replied. And words like that stick with people, especially women who've spent their lives being told they're not good enough. She left before he could respond, leaving Drew with an unfamiliar feeling in his chest. Was it shame? Regret? He couldn't quite name it. Over the next week, Zola transformed Vibe House. She worked tirelessly, bringing in new photographers, new models, new concepts. The office buzzed with an energy it hadn't had in years. Drew found himself watching her from a distance, fascinated by how she commanded respect without raising her voice, how she listened to everyone's ideas, how she made people feel valued. One evening, he found her in the photo studio, directing a shoot for their new homepage. The model was a plus-size woman with vitiligo, her skin a beautiful canvas of contrasting tones. She's stunning, Drew said, surprising himself with the honesty. Zola glanced at him, then back to the shoot. Yes, she is. And she's been rejected by every major agency in Atlanta because they couldn't see past their narrow definition of beauty. Drew watched as the model laughed at something Zola said, her face lighting up with genuine joy. The photographer captured the moment, and even from where Drew stood, he could see it was magical. You're good at this, he admitted. Making people feel comfortable? It's not hard when you see them as human beings instead of walking mannequins. The comment stung, but Drew knew he deserved it. I haven't always been the most inclusive person. That's an understatement, Zola replied, but there was less edge to her voice. Why is that, Drew? Why build an empire on making people feel inadequate? The question caught him off guard. No one had ever asked him that before. Most people were too intimidated by his success, his image, his carefully constructed persona. It sells, he said automatically, but the words felt hollow. Zola gave him a look that said she didn't believe him. There's more to it than that. No one becomes this obsessed with perfection without a reason. Before Drew could respond, his phone rang. It was his mother, Margaret. He excused himself to take the call. Drew, darling, are you coming to the charity gala next week? Margaret asked. The Hendersons are receiving an award, and they specifically asked if you'd be there. Drew winced. The Hendersons, old family friends who had been at that horrible gala 15 years ago. The night that had changed everything. I'm not sure, Mom. We are in the middle of a big rebranding. Oh, but you must come. Everyone important will be there. Bring one of your lovely model girlfriends. Drew's eyes drifted to Zola, who was now showing the model her photos, both of them smiling. I'll think about it. I have to go, Mom. He hung up, a memory pushing its way to the surface. Margaret Hamilton at the Westfield Charity Gala, wearing a dark blue gown. She'd gained weight after Drew's father left, and Mr. Henderson had loudly joked, "Margaret, darling, you're taking up space for two people at this table." Everyone had laughed. Everyone except 15-year-old Drew, who had said nothing, done nothing, as his mother's face crumpled in humiliation. The next day, she'd started her first crash diet. Drew? Earth to Drew. He blinked, finding Zola standing in front of him, concern in her eyes. "Sorry, got distracted," he mumbled. "I asked if you'd approve the new homepage design. We need to launch it tomorrow if we want to hit our goals." Drew looked at the mock-up she was holding, a vibrant collage of diverse faces and bodies, all radiating joy and confidence. It was beautiful. It was authentic. It was nothing like the vibe house he had built. "It's different," he said cautiously. "Different is what we need right now. The team loves it. The test group loved it. Do you trust me or not?" Did he? This woman who had walked into his company and turned everything upside down? This woman who saw through the facade he'd spent years building? Fine. Launch it. Zola broke into a wide smile that transformed her face. "You won't regret it." But as she walked away, Drew wasn't so sure. Everything was changing too fast. His carefully constructed world was shifting beneath his feet. The next morning, Drew arrived at the office to find the team gathered around Mia's computer, cheering. "What's happening?" he asked. "The new homepage," Jason explained, his face alight with excitement. "It's been live for 3 hours, and we're already seeing a 40% increase in engagement. People are sharing it everywhere." Drew pushed through to see the screen. There it was, Zola's vision brought to life. Real people, real bodies, real beauty. And the comments were overwhelmingly positive. Finally, a brand that gets it. This is what representation looks like. Just followed, can't wait to see more. Drew felt a strange mix of emotions. Pride in the success, but also a nagging sense that he should have done this years ago. That he had been wrong. That the image he'd built his life around was nothing but a hollow shell. "Where's Zola?" he asked. "In her office," Mia replied. "She's been fielding calls from journalists all morning. Everyone wants to know what inspired the rebrand." Drew headed to Zola's office, not entirely sure what he wanted to say. "Congratulations? Thank you? I'm sorry for doubting you." He found her on the phone, her back to the door. She was speaking softly, her voice different than the confident tone she used at work. "No, Auntie, I'm not doing this to make a statement. I'm doing it because it's good business. Yes, I know you think I should lose 20 pounds before going on TV. No, I don't need your Weight Watchers referral code." Drew should have left, should have given her privacy, but something kept him rooted to the spot. "I love you too," Zola continued, "but I need to go. Yes, I'm eating vegetables. No, I'm not going to die alone because of my lifestyle choices." She sighed deeply. "Goodbye, Annie." She hung up and turned, startling when she saw Drew. "How long have you been standing there?" she asked, her professional mask slipping back into place. "Not long, Drulit. I just wanted to say congratulations. The new site is a hit." Zola nodded, but her eyes were guarded. "Thank you." An awkward silence fell between them. Drew found himself wanting to ask about the phone call, about the aunt who clearly didn't understand her, about the pain he'd glimpsed in her eyes before she noticed him. Instead, he said, "There's a charity gala next week. Would you like to come? As my plus one." The words hung in the air, surprising them both. "Why?" Zola asked simply. Drew wasn't sure he knew the answer. "Because we should celebrate the success of the rebrand. Because it will be good for Vibe House to have its founder and new creative director presenting a united front." "Those are business reasons," Zola observed. "Is that all this is?" Drew met her eyes, feeling more vulnerable than he had in years. "I don't know. Maybe I just want to spend time with you outside the office." Zola studied him for a long moment. "The charity gala where you'll see all your high society friends? Where you'll have to explain why you brought someone who doesn't look like your usual arm candy. Are you ready for that?" The question cut to the heart of everything. Was he ready to be seen with her? To challenge not just his company's image, but his own? "I think I am," he said quietly. Zola's expression softened slightly. "Okay, Drew, I'll go with you. But not as your employee, not as your plus one. As your equal." "My equal," Drew repeated, feeling something shift inside him. "I wouldn't have it any other way." As he left her office, Drew knew nothing would be the same after this. The walls he'd built around himself were beginning to crumble. And for the first time in years, he wasn't trying to repair them. He just hoped he was strong enough for whatever came next. The night of the Atlanta Children's Hospital Charity Gala arrived faster than Drew expected. He stood in front of his bedroom mirror, adjusting his bow tie for the third time. His penthouse apartment overlooked the glittering city skyline, but Drew barely noticed the view. His mind was on Zola. "What am I doing?" he muttered to himself. In the weeks since he'd invited her to the gala, their working relationship had shifted. The hostile tension had transformed into something else, a pull he couldn't quite name, but couldn't ignore either. His phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Car's downstairs. You ready for tonight?" Drew texted back, "As ready as I'll ever be." The sleek black car pulled up in front of Zola's building in a quieter part of the city. Drew felt oddly nervous as he walked to her door. When she opened it, he momentarily lost his ability to speak. Zola wore a deep emerald gown that hugged every curve of her body. Her hair was styled in loose waves, and a simple gold necklace adorned her neck. She wasn't trying to hide her figure or minimize it. She was celebrating it. "You look—" Drew struggled to find the right word. "Too much?" Zola asked, a hint of vulnerability crossing her face. "Beautiful," Drew finished honestly. "Absolutely beautiful." Something in his tone made Zola's eyes soften. "Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself." In the car, Drew found himself stealing glances at her. The woman beside him was so different from anyone he'd ever been drawn to before. It wasn't just her appearance. It was her confidence, her authenticity, the way she challenged him at every turn. "Nervous?" Zola asked, catching him looking at her. "Why would I be nervous?" "Because you're about to walk into a room full of people who expect you to have a certain type of woman on your arm. And I'm not that type." Drew took a deep breath. "Maybe it's time I stopped being so predictable." The car pulled up to the Grand Hotel where the gala was being held. Photographers lined the entrance, capturing Atlanta's elite as they arrived. When Drew and Zola stepped out, camera flashes lit up the night. "Drew! Drew! Over here!" the photographers called. "Who's your date?" Drew placed his hand gently on the small of Zola's back. "This is Zola Green, creative director at Vibe House." More flashes. More questions. Drew guided Zola inside, aware of the whispers that followed them. He'd never brought someone like her to an event like this. Everyone was noticing. Well, a familiar voice said as they entered the ballroom. Drew Hamilton breaking his own rules. It was Bradley Henderson, son of the couple being honored tonight and Drew's longtime social acquaintance. His eyes traveled over Zola in a way that made Drew's jaw clench. "Bradley, this is Zola Green," Drew said stiffly. "Zola, Bradley Henderson." "Pleasure," Bradley said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "I must say, Drew, this is a departure from your usual aesthetic." Before Drew could respond, Zola stepped forward. "Sometimes a departure is exactly what's needed. Congratulations on your parents' award tonight." Bradley's smile faltered at her poise. "Yes, well, they've always been dedicated to charity." "Speaking of which, Drew, your mother has been looking for you." As if summoned by her name, Margaret Hamilton appeared, elegant in a conservative black dress. At 58, she maintained the slim figure she'd fought so hard for after Drew's father left. "Drew, darling," she exclaimed, air-kissing both his cheeks. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw Zola. "And who is this?" "Mom, this is Zola Green, Vibe House's new creative director." "Zola, my mother, Margaret Hamilton." Margaret's smile was practiced. "How lovely. Drew never brings his work colleagues to these events." "I'm not just a colleague tonight," Zola said smoothly. "I'm his date." Margaret's eyebrows rose. "Oh, well, how modern of him." She turned to Drew. "Darling, the Hendersons are about to give their speech. We should find our table." As they followed Margaret to their assigned table near the front, Drew leaned close to Zola. I'm sorry about that. For what? Your mother being surprised that you brought someone who doesn't fit your usual mold? Or Bradley undressing me with his eyes? Both, Drew admitted. They're not usually so obvious about it. Yes, they are, Zola replied quietly. You just never noticed because it wasn't directed at you. The comment hit Drew like a slap. Was she right? Had he been blind to how people like him treated those who didn't fit their narrow definition of acceptable? At the table, Drew was hyper-aware of the subtle glances, the whispered comments behind hands. He'd always been at the center of this world, admired and envied. But tonight, for the first time, he felt uncomfortable with the judgment being passed. Mr. Henderson took the stage to accept his award, his wife beaming beside him. The same man who had humiliated Drew's mother all those years ago was now being celebrated for his generosity. 15 years ago, at a gala just like this one, that man made my mother cry. Drew whispered to Zola, the words spilling out before he could stop them. Zola looked at him, surprised by the sudden confession. She gained weight after my dad left. Drew continued, his voice low. Henderson made a joke about her taking up space for two people. Everyone laughed. I did nothing. Just sat there, 15 years old, watching my mother fall apart inside while smiling on the outside. Zola's hand found his under the table, her fingers warm and comforting against his. What happened after? She stopped eating, lost 30 pounds in 2 months. I watched her disappear, and all I could think was that at least no one was laughing at her anymore. Drew swallowed hard. I promised myself I'd never be vulnerable like that I'd create a world where everything was perfect, where no one could ever point and laugh. Understanding dawned in Zola's eyes. So that's why you built Vibe House the way you did. It wasn't just about selling an image. It was about protection. Drew had never said these things out loud before, had never connected the dots so clearly. I guess so. Pretty messed up, huh? Not messed up, Zola said gently. Human. We all build defenses against the things that hurt us. But at some point, those defenses can become prisons. Across the table, Margaret was watching them with curious eyes. When the speeches ended and the dancing began, she pulled Drew aside. She's not your usual type, Margaret said bluntly. No, she's not, Drew agreed. Is this serious? Drew looked across the room, where Zola was chatting with another guest, her laugh genuine and warm. I don't know yet, but she's incredible, Mom. Smart, talented, real. Margaret studied her son's face. You look at her differently than the others. Because she is different. She doesn't care about any of this. Drew gestured to the wealthy crowd, the designer clothes, the carefully maintained appearances. She sees through it all, including you? Margaret asked shrewdly. Especially me. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Your father would have hated her. Is that a bad thing? A smile crossed Margaret's face. A real one. Not the social mask she usually wore. Not at all. I think I might like her too. Drew returned to Zola's side, feeling lighter somehow. When the band began playing a slow song, he held out his hand. Dance with me? On the dance floor, Drew was conscious of the stairs, but for the first time, he didn't care. Zola fit perfectly in his arms, her body soft and warm against his. People are watching, she murmured. Let them, Drew replied. I'm done caring what they think. Zola looked up at him, her eyes searching his face. Are you? Really? Because I've seen men like you before, Drew. Men who think they want something different until the novelty wears off. Until it gets hard. I'm not like that, Drew said, but even he heard the uncertainty in his voice. I hope not, Zola said simply. Because I don't let people close easily. I've been hurt too many times by men who love my body in private, but were ashamed to be seen with me in public. The honesty in her voice struck Drew deeply. Tell me about him. The one who hurt you the most. Zola was quiet for a moment, then said, his name was Marcus. We dated for almost 2 years. He never once introduced me to his family, his friends from college, his business associates. I was his secret, good enough to love behind closed doors, but not good enough to acknowledge in the real world. That's terrible, Drew said, genuinely appalled. It was. But the worst part, I accepted it. I believed I deserved nothing better. Zola's eyes held his. I'll never make that mistake again. The song ended, but they stayed on the dance floor, connected by something neither of them had expected to find. Later that night, as Drew drove Zola home, a comfortable silence filled the car. When they reached her building, he walked her to her door. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said. "Thank you for asking me," she replied. It was enlightening. Drew hesitated, then said, "Zola, I want you to know that I'm not ashamed to be seen with you. The opposite, actually. Tonight was the first time I've felt real in years." Zola's smile was gentle. "That's a good start, Drew. But we've got a long way to go before I believe you're really changing. What would convince you?" "Time," she said simply. "Actions. Consistency." Drew nodded, understanding. "Then that's what I'll give you." He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. She didn't. Their kiss was soft, tentative, a question being asked and cautiously answered. When they parted, Zola touched his face lightly. "Good night, Drew." "Good night, Zola." The next morning, Drew arrived at the office earlier than usual. He'd hardly slept, his mind filled with thoughts of Zola, of their kiss, of everything she'd made him question about himself. He was surprised to find her already there, working in the conference room with layouts spread across the table. "Morning," he said, trying to sound casual. "You're here early." Zola looked up, her professional mask firmly in place. "We have the Burton account pitch today. I wanted to make sure everything was perfect." Drew noticed the slight distance in her manner. "About last night." "Last night was lovely," Zola interrupted. "But this is work, Drew. I need to keep the two separate." "Of course," Drew said, disappointed but understanding. So, the Burton account. They spent the morning reviewing the pitch, their conversation strictly professional. But Drew couldn't help noticing the small moments, how her hand lingered when passing him a document, how her eyes sought his when making a point, how they both found reasons to stand just a little too close. The pitch meeting went brilliantly. Zola's presentation was flawless, her vision for Burton's new campaign both innovative and accessible. The clients were visibly impressed, especially when Drew stepped in to support her ideas with market projections. "We've never seen Vibe House take this direction before," Mrs. Burton commented. "It's refreshing. Authentic. That's all Zola," Drew said honestly. "She's helping us evolve into something better." The look Zola gave him was worth more than any kiss. After the clients left, the office erupted in celebration. They'd landed a major account, one that would cement Vibe House's new direction. In the excitement, Drew pulled Zola into a hug without thinking. She stiffened momentarily, then relaxed against him. "We did it," he murmured into her hair. "Yes, we did," she replied, stepping back to a more professional distance. Jason approached, champagne bottles in hand. "Party in the break room. Let's celebrate." The afternoon dissolved into impromptu festivities. Drew watched as Zola mingled with the team, her laugh carrying across the room. She belonged here, he realized. She had transformed not just the company, but the entire atmosphere in just a few short weeks. As the party wound down, Drew retreated to his office to check emails. A few minutes later, Zola appeared in his doorway. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Always," Drew replied, gesturing to the chair opposite his desk. Instead of sitting, Zola closed the door behind her. "I need to be clear about something, Drew. I like you, more than I expected to, but I won't be someone's experiment in dating outside their comfort zone." Drew stood, moving around the desk to face her directly. "Is that what you think this is? Isn't it? The successful, image-conscious businessman suddenly interested in the curvy black woman who doesn't fit his usual type? It's a story I've seen before, Drew. It doesn't end well for women like me." Her directness was one of the things he admired most about her. "That's not what's happening here, Zola. Yes, you challenge everything I thought I wanted. But that's because what I thought I wanted was never what I needed." "And what do you need?" she asked quietly. Drew took a step closer. "Someone real. Someone who sees through the facade I've spent years building. Someone who makes me want to be better than I am." Pretty words, Zola said, but he could see the hope in her eyes. "But I need more than words, Drew." "Then let me show you," he said. "Let me prove that this isn't an experiment, that I'm serious about changing about you." Zola studied his face. How? Have dinner with me tomorrow night. Not at some fancy restaurant where we'll be seen, not as a business meeting. Just you and me at my place. I'll cook. Zola raised an eyebrow. You cook. There's a lot you don't know about me yet, Drew said with a smile. Say yes. After a moment, Zola nodded. Yes. But Drew, don't hurt me. I won't recover as easily as your brand did from that podcast comment. The reminder of his thoughtless words years ago was like a bucket of cold water. I won't hurt you, Zola. That's a promise. The next evening, Drew fussed over his apartment like never before. He'd spent hours cooking his grandmother's famous lasagna, the one recipe he perfected over years of living alone. The table was set with candles, wine breathing in crystal glasses. When Zola arrived, she seemed surprised by the effort he'd made. This is not what I expected. What did you expect? Drew asked, taking her coat. A catered meal. Hired staff. Something more. Drew Hamilton. Drew laughed. This is the real Drew Hamilton. The one not many people get to see. Over dinner, they talked about everything except work. Zola told him about growing up in a family where her curves were constantly criticized, about a sister who sent her diet tips every Christmas, about an aunt who believed being thin was the only path to happiness. My whole life, I've been told to take up less space, she said. It took me years to realize that was never going to happen and that it shouldn't. Drew listened, really listened, seeing for the first time how the world he'd helped create had affected women like Zola. I'm part of the problem, aren't I? He asked quietly. Zola reached across the table to take his hand. You were, but you don't have to be anymore. After dinner, they moved to the couch with glasses of wine. The city lights twinkled beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, but Drew couldn't take his eyes off Zola. What? She asked, noticing his gaze. I'm just wondering how I got so lucky, he admitted, to have you walk into my office and turn everything upside down. Zola smiled. It wasn't luck. It was desperation. Your numbers were tanking, remember? Drew laughed. True, but I'm glad it was you who came to save Vibe House. Anyone else would have just pushed new marketing strategies. You pushed me to be better. And are you? Better? Drew considered the question. I'm trying. It's not easy to unlearn a lifetime of thinking a certain way. But being with you, it makes me want to try harder. Zola set down her wine glass and moved closer to him. That's a good answer. Their kiss was different this time, deeper, more certain. Drew pulled her closer, amazed by how right she felt in his arms, how perfect the softness of her body was against his. When they finally parted, both breathless, Zola whispered, I should go. Stay, Drew said, then quickly added, just to talk. I'm not rushing this, Zola. You're too important. The vulnerability in his voice seemed to reach her. She nodded slowly. Just to talk. They stayed up late into the night, sharing stories, dreams, fears. Drew told her about growing up with a father who valued appearance above all else, who left when Margaret let herself go after years of emotional neglect. He taught me that love was conditional, Drew said, that people only stayed if you were perfect. And yet here I am, Zola said softly, decidedly imperfect by your father's standards. And I'm not going anywhere. When morning came, Drew woke on the couch, Zola curled against him, both still fully dressed. They'd fallen asleep talking, more intimate in their honesty than any physical encounter could have been. He watched her sleep, her face peaceful, beautiful. Something shifted in his chest, a warmth he'd never felt before, a certainty that this woman had changed him irrevocably. Zola's eyes fluttered open. She smiled when she saw him. Morning, morning, he replied, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Coffee, please. In the kitchen, as Drew prepared breakfast, Zola checked her phone. Her expression changed suddenly. Drew, you need to see this. She handed him her phone. On the screen was a gossip website with a headline, Drew Hamilton, from Instagram baddies to boardroom bodies. Below was a photo of them at the gala, dancing close, looking into each other's eyes. The caption read, Is the perfectionist CEO rebranding his taste in women too? Drew felt sick. Zola, I'm so sorry. This is disgusting. Zola took the phone back, her face composed, but her eyes hurt. This is the world you helped create, Drew. A world where a woman's value is reduced to her body type. Where my professional accomplishments mean nothing compared to the fact that I'm your curvy date. I'll fix this, Drew promised. I'll call my publicist, issue a statement. Denouncing what exactly? Zola challenged. The fact that you're dating someone who doesn't fit the mold? That would only make it worse. Drew ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. Then what do you want me to do? Nothing, Zola said, gathering her things. This isn't your problem to fix. It's mine to deal with, as I've been dealing with it my whole life. Zola, please don't leave like this. She paused at the door. I need some space, Drew, to figure out if this, us, is worth the public scrutiny. If you're worth it. The door closed behind her, leaving Drew alone with the consequences of the world he'd helped build. A world that now threatened the one relationship that had finally made him feel real. His phone rang, Jason calling from the office. Drew, have you seen the article? It's everywhere. The board is concerned about the company image. They're calling an emergency meeting. Drew closed his eyes, his perfect world crumbling around him. Tell them I'll be there in an hour. As he hung up, Drew knew he was facing a choice. He could retreat to the safety of his carefully constructed image, or he could fight for something real, for Zola. For the first time in his life, the decision wasn't even hard. Drew arrived at the Vibe House office to find the atmosphere tense. Employees huddled in small groups, conversations stopping abruptly when they noticed him. His assistant Mia hurried over, her expression worried. The board members are waiting in the main conference room, she said quietly. They've been here for 30 minutes already. Have you seen Zola? Drew asked. Mia shook her head. She called in sick today. Drew nodded, unsurprised but disappointed. He'd hoped to talk to Zola before facing the board, to assure her that he would handle this mess. Now he would have to do it without knowing where they stood. As he approached the conference room, Jason intercepted him in the hallway. It's bad, Drew, he warned. Henderson is on the warpath. Henderson? Drew stopped short. What does Bradley Henderson have to do with this? His family owns 20% of Vibe House, remember? He's in there with the other board members, talking about brand integrity and consistent messaging. Drew felt a surge of anger. Of course Bradley would be involved. The man who had leered at Zola all evening at the gala was now questioning the company's integrity because Drew was dating her. Let's get this over with, Drew said grimly. He pushed open the conference room doors to find 6 board members seated around the table, Bradley Henderson among them. The gossip article was displayed on the large screen behind them, Zola's image blown up for all to see. Drew, Wallace Barnes, the head of the board, greeted him coolly. Thank you for joining us on such short notice. What's this about, Wallace? Drew asked, though he knew perfectly well. This, Bradley said, gesturing to the screen. This public relations situation. Drew fixed him with a cold stare. You mean my personal life? When you're the face of Vibe House, there is no personal life, Bradley replied. Everything you do reflects on this company. And dating a beautiful, intelligent woman reflects poorly on Vibe House. How? Exactly? Drew challenged. Wallace cleared his throat. Drew, no one is questioning Ms. Green's qualifications or character. The concern is about the inconsistency with your established brand. My brand, Drew repeated slowly. You mean the shallow, exclusionary image I've promoted for years? The one that's been losing us followers and revenue until Zola came along and turned things around. That's not fair, another board member interjected. Your vision built this company, and my vision is evolving, Drew countered. Vibe House needs to change with the times. Zola has shown us how to do that. It's working. The Burton account. One account doesn't outweigh years of brand building, Bradley interrupted. Your personal choices are creating confusion in the market. Drew felt his temper rising. Say what you really mean, Bradley. You're upset because I'm dating a curvy black woman instead of the stick-thin models you're used to seeing on my arm. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. That's an unfair characterization, Wallace finally said. Our concern is purely about business. Is it? Drew asked. Because the headline we're discussing explicitly mentions bodies. Not business strategies, not creative direction, bodies. He looked around the table, taking in the uncomfortable expressions. These were people who had supported his vision for years, who had never questioned the narrow beauty standards he promoted, because it had made them all rich. The board has come to a decision, Wallace said. We believe it would be in the best interest of the company if you issued a statement clarifying that your relationship with Ms. Green is purely professional, and that the photos from the gala were misinterpreted. Drew stared at him in disbelief. You want me to lie? To publicly deny my feelings for Zola? We want you to put the company first, Bradley said smoothly. As you always have. Drew looked at the faces around the table. Men and women who had never questioned the toxic culture they'd helped create. For the first time, he saw them clearly. Shallow, fearful people clinging to an outdated idea of beauty and worth. And if I refuse? Drew asked quietly. Wallace sighed. Then the board will need to reevaluate your position as CEO. The threat hung in the air. Drew had built Vibe House from nothing, had poured his life into it. Could he really walk away? For a relationship that had barely begun? I need time to think, Drew said finally. You have until tomorrow morning, Wallace replied. We need this handled quickly, before the story spreads further. Drew left the conference room, his mind racing. In his office, he closed the door and sank into his chair, burying his face in his hands. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. He looked up to find Mia standing in the doorway. I thought you might need this, she said, placing a cup of coffee on his desk. And I wanted you to know that not everyone here agrees with the board. Drew gave her a grateful smile. Thank you, Mia. After she left, Drew tried calling Zola again. No answer. He texted, we need to talk. Please. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No reply. Drew spent the rest of the day going through the motions, reviewing campaigns, attending meetings, all while the clock ticked down on the board's ultimatum. By evening, the office had emptied, but Drew remained at his desk, staring out at the Atlanta skyline as the buildings lit up against the darkening sky. His phone rang, his mother. Drew, are you all right? I saw that awful article. Drew sighed. I'm fine, Mom. Just trying to figure out what to do. About the board? Jason called me. He's worried about you. Of course Jason would call his mother. The two had always been close. They want me to deny my relationship with Zola, Drew said, to protect the company image. Margaret was quiet for a moment. And what do you want to do? I don't know, Drew admitted. Vibe House is everything I've worked for. But Zola, she makes me want to be better than I am, than I've been. You know, Margaret said slowly, after your father left, I spent years trying to make myself smaller. Literally, I thought if I could just be thin enough, pretty enough, perfect enough, then I would be worthy of love. Drew had never heard his mother speak so openly about this. It was a lie, Margaret continued. One I told myself, one the world told me. One you've been telling through Vibe House, Drew. And it's hurt people. It's hurt women like Zola. Like me. Mom, let me finish, Margaret interrupted gently. When I saw you with Zola at the gala, I saw something I've never seen before. My son being real, being happy, not performing. Drew felt a lump in his throat. The board might force me out if I don't do what they want. Then maybe it's time to build something new, Margaret said simply. Something better. After hanging up, Drew sat in the darkness of his office, his mother's words echoing in his mind. Could he really walk away from everything he built? Start over? His phone lit up with a notification. Another gossip site had picked up the story, this time with additional photos of Drew and Zola at the office, working late together. The headline was even worse. Office romance or diversity hire. Inside, Drew Hamilton's curvy obsession. Drew felt sick. The photos could only have come from someone inside Vibe House. Someone was actively trying to hurt Zola, to reduce her to nothing more than her body. As he stared at the awful headline, something inside him snapped. This was the world he had helped create. A world where a woman's worth was measured by her dress size, where her professional accomplishments meant nothing compared to her appearance. He grabbed his keys and headed for the parking garage. He needed to see Zola, to tell her he was done playing by the old rules. But as he reached his car, his phone rang again. It was Jason. Drew, where are you? Leaving the office. I need to talk to Zola. She's here, Jason said, in the conference room, and she's furious. Drew raced back to the building. He found Zola in the main conference room, surrounded by printouts of the latest article. Her eyes were red-rimmed but fierce when she looked up at him. "Did you see this?" she demanded, gesturing to the papers. "Someone inside Vibe House is feeding these vultures. Someone with access to the security cameras." Drew nodded grimly. "I just saw it. Zola, I'm so sorry. I didn't come here for apologies," she said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "I came to clear out my office." Drew felt his heart drop. "You're quitting? What choice do I have? I can't work at a company where I'm reduced to a curvy obsession, where my body is a topic for office gossip and media speculation." "We can fight this," Drew insisted. "Together." Zola laughed bitterly. "Fight it how? The board already gave you your marching orders, didn't they? Deny the relationship, protect the precious Vibe House image." Drew couldn't deny it. "They did, but I haven't decided what I'm going to do." "That's the problem, Drew," Zola said, her eyes softening slightly. "The fact that you need to decide at all tells me everything I need to know." She gathered the papers into her bag. "I thought you were changing. I thought what we had might be worth the risk. But the moment things got hard, you hesitated." "It's not that simple," Drew protested. "Vibe House is everything I've built. And it's built on lies," Zola cut in. "On making people feel inadequate. On selling an impossible standard of beauty that hurts real women every day." Drew knew she was right. Had known it for weeks, really, since the day she walked into his office and challenged everything he thought he valued. "I resign, effective immediately," Zola said formally. "My team has the Burton campaign well in hand. They don't need me to finish it. I need you," Drew said quietly. Zola paused, her expression softening momentarily before hardening again. "No, you don't. You need to figure out who you are without all this." She gestured around the sleek conference room. "Without the image, without the brand. Who is Drew Hamilton when all that's stripped away?" She walked to the door, then turned back one last time. "When you know the answer to that, maybe we can talk. But I won't be someone's dirty secret again. I deserve better." And then she was gone, the click of her heels fading down the hallway. Drew stood alone in the conference room, surrounded by the evidence of the toxic culture he'd helped create. A culture that had just cost him the most real relationship he'd ever had. Jason appeared in the doorway. "I'm sorry, man. I heard everything." Drew looked at his oldest friend. "Did you know the board was planning this?" Jason shook his head. "No, but I'm not surprised. They've always been more concerned with image than substance." "Who leaked the photos, Jason? Who's trying to hurt Zola?" Jason hesitated. "I have a theory. The new security footage, it would take someone with admin access to the system. Like Bradley Henderson," Drew said, the pieces falling into place. "He's been trying to push me out for months. This was the perfect opportunity." "What are you going to do?" Jason asked. Drew looked around the conference room, at the empire he'd built on shallow values and false standards. "I don't know yet, but I'm not letting them win." That night, Drew couldn't sleep. He paced his penthouse apartment, replaying Zola's words in his mind. Who was he without the brand? Without the image he'd hidden behind for so long? By dawn, he had his answer. He arrived at the office early, before any of the board members or staff. In his office, he set up his laptop and opened the live stream feature on the Vibe House Instagram account, the account with millions of followers who had bought into his perfect lifestyle for years. Drew took a deep breath, checked his appearance one last time, not out of vanity, but out of habit, and hit the Go Live button. Viewers began joining immediately. Hundreds, then thousands. "Good morning," Drew began, his voice steadier than he felt. "I'm coming to you today without a script, without filters, without the carefully constructed imagery used to seeing from me and from Vibe House." He paused, gathering his courage. "Her name is Zola. Zola Green. You've seen the articles, the photos, the speculation. She wasn't a project. She wasn't a brand. She was the first person to show me what beauty looks like when it doesn't need permission." Drew felt a weight lifting as he continued. "For years, I've sold you a lie. The lie that beauty only looks one way. That worth is measured in waist size and follower counts. That aspiration means erasing your uniqueness to fit a narrow standard." The viewer count kept climbing. Comments flooded in. some supportive, some angry, all engaged. I failed Zola because I was afraid to unlearn the lie I helped sell. But I'm not afraid anymore. Today, I'm stepping down as CEO of Vibe House. Drew hadn't planned to say those words, but as they left his mouth, he knew they were right. This company needs new leadership, a new vision. One that celebrates all bodies, all beauty, all people. One that builds confidence instead of tearing it down to sell products. He looked directly into the camera, imagining Zola watching, hoping she could feel his sincerity. To anyone I've hurt with the toxic standards I've promoted, I'm sorry. To Zola, I'm sorry I hesitated when I should have stood beside you without question. And to myself, I'm sorry for hiding behind an image instead of being real. Drew entered the live stream, his hands shaking slightly. Within seconds, his phone exploded with notifications. Calls from board members, texts from Jason, messages from friends and colleagues. But the only notification he cared about was the simple text that appeared 10 minutes later. Say it again. It was from Zola. Drew smiled, hope blooming in his chest for the first time since she'd walked out. He texted back. Which part? Her reply came quickly. The part where you're not afraid anymore. I'm not, he wrote. And I miss you. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. I miss you too, Zola replied. But I need to know this is real, Drew. That you're not going to change your mind when the dust settles. Drew didn't hesitate. Meet me tonight. Let me show you how real this is. A pause, then, where? The coffee shop where we had our first argument about the Burton campaign. 7 p.m. I'll be there, Zola wrote. Drew set down his phone just as his office door burst open. Bradley Henderson stormed in, his face purple with rage, followed by Wallace and 2 other board members. What the hell was that? Bradley demanded. You just tanked our stock with that little confession. Drew remained calm. I believe I just saved this company. The future isn't an exclusion, Bradley. It's an authenticity. You're finished, Bradley spat. The board will remove you immediately. No need, Drew said, standing. I've already resigned. Check your emails. You'll find my formal resignation letter, effective immediately. Wallace looked stunned. Drew, be reasonable. We can fix this. Issue a clarification. There's nothing to fix, Drew interrupted. I meant every word. Vibe House needs to change, and clearly I'm not the person to lead that change. Not anymore. He began gathering his personal items into a box. My shares are in a voting trust controlled by my mother, by the way. In case you were wondering where that leaves the balance of power on the board. Bradley's face went pale. Margaret Hamilton's shares, combined with Drew's, constituted a controlling interest in the company. You can't just walk away, Bradley sputtered. This company is your life. Drew paused, looking around the office he'd occupied for years. The awards, the magazine covers, the symbols of success that had once meant everything to him. Not anymore, he said simply. I found something better. As Drew carried his box through the office, employees watched in silence. Some looked confused, others supportive. Mia hurried after him. What should I tell people? She asked anxiously. Drew smiled at her. Tell them the truth. I'm finally practicing what Zola has been preaching. Authenticity over image. Reality over aspiration. What will you do now? Mia asked. Drew realized he hadn't thought that far ahead. His entire adult life had been devoted to building Vibe House. Without it, who was he? But as he stepped into the elevator, box in hand, he felt lighter than he had in years. I'm going to build something new, he said, echoing his mother's words. Something better. That evening, Drew arrived at the coffee shop early. He chose a table in the corner and waited, his heart pounding with anticipation and uncertainty. Would Zola even show up? And if she did, would she give him another chance? The door opened, and there she was, dressed simply in jeans and a sweater, her natural beauty taking his breath away as it had from the first moment he saw her. She spotted him and walked over, sliding into the chair across from him. Hi, she said simply. Suddenly nervous. Thank you for coming. Zola studied his face. That was quite a live stream this morning. I meant every word. I believe you, Zola said softly. But Drew, you just walked away from everything you've spent years building. Are you sure you won't regret that? Resent me for it. Drew reached across the table, taking her hand in his. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. Not standing up for you immediately. Not seeing how toxic that world was until I was at risk of losing you. And now? What happens now? Zola asked. Now I figure out who Drew Hamilton really is, he said. Without the brand, without the image. And I'd like to do that with you, if you'll give me another chance. Zola's eyes were cautious, but hopeful. What about work? Your career? Drew smiled. Actually, I have some ideas about that. Ideas I'd like to share with you. I'm listening, Zola said. I was thinking about what you said, about building something better. What if we did that together? A new kind of creative agency, one focused on authentic beauty, on celebrating people as they are instead of telling them they need to change. Zola's expression softened. That sounds amazing. But Drew, are you sure you're ready for that? To completely change your professional identity. I've never been more sure of anything, Drew said firmly. Except how I feel about you. A small smile played at Zola's lips. And how is that, exactly? Drew took a deep breath. I'm falling in love with you, Zola Green. With your strength, your authenticity, your ability to see through all my carefully constructed walls. You've changed me in all the ways I needed to change. Tears shimmered in Zola's eyes. That's a good answer, Drew Hamilton. A really good answer. She leaned across the table and kissed him softly, not caring who might see, who might judge. For the first time in her life, she felt completely accepted, completely valued. When they parted, Drew whispered, "So, partners? In business and everything else." Zola smiled, her heart full. Partners, but on one condition. Anything, Drew promised. Our agency's first campaign needs to be about taking up space. About women, all women, owning their beauty without apology. Drew nodded, squeezing her hand. I think I know just the model to feature. As they left the coffee shop together, hand in hand, Drew felt as though he was truly seeing the world clearly for the first time. A world where perfection wasn't the goal, where authenticity was the most beautiful quality anyone could possess. And walking beside him was the woman who had shown him that truth, the woman whose curves he once couldn't handle, but now couldn't imagine living without. 3 months passed in a whirlwind of activity. Drew and Zola had rented a small office space in a converted warehouse on the east side of Atlanta. The space was nothing like the sleek, minimalist Vibe House headquarters. It was warm, inviting, with exposed brick walls and large windows that flooded the rooms with natural light. What do you think of this layout? Zola asked, showing Drew her sketches for their first major client presentation. Drew studied the designs, still amazed by Zola's talent. It's perfect, authentic, but still aspirational in the right way. Their new agency, True Image, had started small but was growing quickly. Their mission statement was simple: beauty in truth. Truth in beauty. They specialized in helping brands connect with customers through authentic representation and honest messaging. Drew leaned back in his chair, watching Zola work. He'd never been happier. Walking away from Vibe House had been terrifying, but every day since had confirmed it was the right decision. We should celebrate tonight, he suggested. It's been exactly 3 months since we launched. Zola smiled, the smile that still made his heart skip. Good idea. Your place or mine? Actually, I was thinking we could try that new restaurant on Peachtree. The one you mentioned last week. Zola's smile faltered slightly. Are you sure? It's pretty high profile. Lots of industry people eat there. Drew understood her hesitation. Though they'd been together officially for 3 months, they kept a relatively low profile, focusing on building their business rather than their public image. I'm sure, Drew said firmly. I want to take my gorgeous girlfriend out to celebrate our success. I'm proud to be seen with you, Zola. I always will be. The uncertainty in her eyes faded, replaced by warmth. This was still new for her. Having a partner who wasn't afraid to acknowledge their relationship publicly, who celebrated rather than hid her curves. Okay then, she agreed. It's a date. That evening, Drew picked Zola up at her apartment. She wore a fitted red dress that accentuated every curve, her hair styled in loose waves around her face. You look stunning, Drew said, meaning every word. Zola did a little twirl. This dress has been in my closet for 2 years. I never had the courage to wear it before. It's too noticeable. Noticeable is good, Drew said, taking her hand. You deserve to be noticed, Zola. You deserve to take up all the space you want. At the restaurant, they were seated at a prime table near the center of the room. Drew noticed several familiar faces from the Atlanta media scene, including 2 former Vibe House clients who dropped the company after Drew's departure. People are looking, Zola murmured, though she didn't seem uncomfortable. Let them look, Drew replied, reaching across the table to take her hand. All they'll see is the 2 most successful new agency owners in Atlanta enjoying dinner. Their meal was interrupted when Jason approached their table, grinning widely. I thought that was you too. Mind if I join you for a minute? Drew welcomed his old friend, who'd remained at Vibe House despite the upheaval. How are things at the old place? Drew asked after they'd exchanged greetings. Jason's expression grew serious. Not great. Bradley's running it into the ground. Half the creative team has quit, and 3 major clients have pulled their accounts. I'm sorry to hear that, Drew said, and he meant it. Despite everything, he'd built that company from nothing. It hurt to hear it was struggling. Don't be, Jason replied. You were right to leave. The culture there was toxic. Always has been. He turned to Zola. And for what I hear, you 2 are killing it with True Image. Zola smiled. We're doing well. Turns out there's a huge market for authenticity in advertising. Who knew? Everyone except the old guard, Jason laughed. Speaking of which, I should warn you, the Hendersons are here tonight too. Back corner table. Drew instinctively looked, catching Bradley Henderson's cold stare from across the restaurant. Thanks for the heads up. After Jason left, Zola squeezed Drew's hand. You okay? Drew nodded, turning his attention back to her. More than okay. I'm exactly where I want to be, with exactly who I want to be with. They enjoyed the rest of their meal, talking about new client prospects and campaign ideas. Drew marveled at how seamlessly they worked together, how their different perspectives created something stronger than either could achieve alone. As they waited for dessert, Drew noticed Bradley Henderson approaching their table, his expression fixed in a false smile. Drew Hamilton, Bradley said loudly, and the famous Zola Green, Atlanta's new power couple. Drew felt Zola tense beside him. Bradley, he acknowledged coolly. Good to see you. Is it? Bradley asked, his smile not reaching his eyes. I wouldn't think you'd be happy to see anyone from your old life, considering how dramatically you left it all behind. Some parts were worth leaving, Drew replied evenly. Others I miss. How's Vibe House doing? Bradley's smile tightened. Rebranding. Reinventing. You know how it goes. I do, Drew agreed. Change can be difficult, but necessary. Bradley's attention shifted to Zola, his gaze traveling over her in a way that made Drew's jaw clench. You must be very proud of your influence over Drew. Not many women can convince a man to throw away an empire. Before Drew could respond, Zola spoke up, her voice calm but firm. Drew didn't throw away anything, Mr. Henderson. He built something better. Something real. Real, Bradley repeated with a small laugh. That seems to be your favorite word. It's a good word, Zola replied. You should try it sometime. Bradley's facade slipped, irritation flashing across his face. Well, enjoy your little boutique agency while it lasts. The real players in this industry know it's just a novelty act. Is that why the Burton campaign we created has increased their sales by 30%? Drew asked innocently. Or why 3 of your former clients have meetings with us next week? Bradley's face flushed. This inclusive trend will fade. The aspirational model works because people don't really want to see themselves in advertising. They want to see what they could be. No, Zola said quietly. They want to see that they're already worthy exactly as they are. Bradley scoffed, but before he could respond, an older woman approached their table. Drew? I thought that was you. Drew stood immediately. Mrs. Henderson. How are you? Mrs. Henderson, Bradley's mother, smiled warmly. She was in her 70s now, elegant in an expensive dress that couldn't quite hide her struggle with weight as she aged. I'm well, dear. And you must be Zola, she said, turning to Zola with genuine interest. I've heard so much about you and your new agency. That campaign you did for the women's shelter was simply wonderful. Zola thanked her, clearly surprised by the warm reception. "Mother," Bradley interrupted, "we should return to our table." Mrs. Henderson waved him off. "In a moment, Bradley. I wanted to ask these two a question first." She turned back to Drew and Zola. "My foundation is hosting a charity fashion show next month. We're featuring women of all sizes, ages, and backgrounds. I was hoping True Image might be interested in handling the promotional materials." Bradley looked mortified. "Mother, we already discussed having Vibe House. And I told you I wanted something fresh, something authentic," Mrs. Henderson said firmly. "Something like what these two are creating." Drew glanced at Zola, who nodded slightly. "We'd be honored, Mrs. Henderson," he said. "Wonderful." Mrs. Henderson beamed. "My assistant will call your office on Monday to set up a meeting." She patted Bradley's arm. "Now we can go back to our table, dear." As they walked away, Bradley glanced back with a look of pure venom. Drew and Zola burst into laughter the moment they were out of earshot. "Did that really just happen?" Zola asked. "Poetic justice," Drew replied, raising his wine glass in a toast. To Mrs. Henderson, unlikely ally. Later that night, as they walked along the Atlanta Beltline, enjoying the warm spring evening, Drew felt a sense of contentment he'd never known before. Zola's hand was warm in his, her presence beside him more valuable than all the success he'd ever chased. "Move in with me," he said suddenly. Zola stopped walking, turning to face him. "What? Move in with me," Drew repeated, "or we can find a new place together. I want to come home to you every night. I want to build a life with you, not just a business." Zola studied his face, searching for any hint of doubt. "Are you sure? It's only been 3 months." "I've never been more sure of anything," Drew said, taking both her hands in his. "I love you, Zola. I love who I am when I'm with you. I love the life we're creating together." Tears shimmered in Zola's eyes. "I love you too. But, Drew, living together is a big step. People will talk even more than they already do." "Let them talk," Drew said firmly. "I don't care what anyone thinks except you." A slow smile spread across Zola's face. "Okay then. Yes, let's find a place together. Something that's ours, not just yours or mine." Drew pulled her close, kissing her deeply under the string lights of the Beltline. When they parted, both slightly breathless, Zola laughed. "What?" Drew asked, smiling at the joy on her face. "Just thinking about how far we've come," she said. "From that first day in your office when you couldn't even look me in the eye because I wasn't your type." Drew winced at the memory. "I was such an idiot." "You were," Zola agreed, her eyes twinkling. "But you learned. That's what matters." 2 weeks later, they found the perfect house. A renovated craftsman in a diverse neighborhood with a large backyard and plenty of natural light. As they signed the papers, Drew felt another piece of his new life falling into place. The morning they were set to move in, Drew was surprised to find his mother on his doorstep, dressed casually with her hair pulled back, a far cry from the polished socialite she usually presented to the world. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Margaret smiled. "I came to help with the move, of course. That's what family does." Drew hugged her, touched by the gesture. "Does this mean you approve? Of me and Zola? Of all the changes?" Margaret pulled back to look at her son. "Drew, I've never been prouder of you than I am right now. You finally found the courage to be real, to walk away from the shallow values your father taught you, and build something meaningful." Drew felt a lump in his throat. "I had a good example. You've been rebuilding yourself, too." It was true. In the months since Drew's dramatic departure from Vibe House, Margaret had undergone her own transformation. She'd stopped coloring her hair, letting the natural gray show through. She'd quit 3 society committees that made her miserable and started volunteering at a women's shelter instead. "We're both works in progress," Margaret said with a smile. "Now, where's that wonderful woman who helped my son find his backbone?" Zola arrived an hour later with the first load of her belongings. She was surprised but pleased to find Margaret there, and the two women quickly fell into comfortable conversation as they unpacked kitchen items. Drew watched them from the doorway, his heart full. This was family, not the perfect Instagram-ready version he'd once tried to project, but something real and messy and infinitely more valuable. The next few months were busy ones for True Image. The Henderson Foundation fashion show was a massive success, generating positive press and attracting new clients. Drew and Zola worked long hours, but unlike at Vibe House, the work felt meaningful, purposeful. They hired their first employees, a diverse team of creatives who shared their vision for authentic representation. Their office became known for its warm, inclusive atmosphere and groundbreaking campaigns. "I never thought success could feel like this," Drew admitted to Zola one night as they sat on the porch of their new home. "At Vibe House, every achievement just left me hungry for more. Nothing was ever enough." Zola rested her head on his shoulder. "Because you were chasing the wrong things. Validation, perfection, an impossible ideal. And now you're building something real," Zola said simply. "Something that helps rather than hurts." Drew kissed the top of her head, marveling at how much his life had changed in less than a year. From a moment Zola had walked into his office with her confident presence and unapologetic curves, everything had shifted. His values, his goals, his definition of success. "I have something to show you," he said, reaching for his laptop. "A new project I've been working on." Zola looked curious as Drew opened a document titled "Take Up Space." "What's this?" she asked. "A book proposal," Drew explained. "My story, our story, about unlearning toxic beauty standards and building something better. About what happened at Vibe House and why I walked away. About finding you." Zola's eyes widened as she scrolled through the outline. "Drew, this is incredible. But are you sure you want to be this vulnerable publicly? Tell these personal stories?" Drew nodded. "I'm sure. For years, I helped sell the lie that worth is tied to appearance. I need to help undo that damage. And if sharing my journey helps even one person reject those toxic standards, it's worth it." Zola closed the laptop and kissed him deeply. "I'm so proud of the man you've become, Drew Hamilton. I couldn't have done it without you," he said honestly. "You showed me what I was missing, what real beauty looks like when it doesn't need permission." 6 months later, Drew stood nervously backstage at a packed bookstore. Take Up Space, How I Learned to Value Substance Over Image, had become an unexpected bestseller, touching a cultural nerve and sparking important conversations about beauty standards and authenticity in media. Zola squeezed his hand. "Ready for your first book signing?" Drew took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." As he stepped out to address the crowd, Drew was struck by the diversity of the audience. People of all sizes, colors, and backgrounds who had connected with his message of authenticity and acceptance. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "A year ago, I was living what looked like a perfect life. I had built a successful company based on selling an impossible standard of beauty. I surrounded myself with people who fit a narrow definition of aspirational. I thought I had it all figured out." He paused, his eyes finding Zola in the front row. "And then Zola Green walked into my office and changed everything. She showed me that true beauty isn't about fitting a mold, it's about breaking it. That the most attractive quality anyone can possess is authenticity. That taking up space, physically, emotionally, professionally, isn't something to apologize for. It's something to celebrate." The crowd applauded, many nodding in recognition of truths they'd long felt but rarely heard expressed. "This book is my confession," Drew continued. "My apology for the harm I helped cause, and my commitment to doing better, to being better. It's also a love story, not just between me and the amazing woman who opened my eyes, but between all of us and our true selves." After the reading and signing, Drew and Zola walked hand in hand to their favorite coffee shop, the same one where they'd reunited after his Instagram confession. "I have something to ask you," Drew said as they settled into their usual corner table. Zola raised an eyebrow. "That sounds serious." Drew reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Zola's eyes widened. "I had a whole speech planned," Drew said, his voice suddenly nervous. "About how you changed my life, how you helped me see what really matters, how I can't imagine my future without you. But," Zola prompted, her eyes glistening. "But it all comes down to this," Drew said, opening the box to reveal a vintage emerald ring. "I love you, Zola Green. I love your mind, your heart, your strength. I love your curves, your edges, every inch of you. Will you marry me? Tears spilled down Zola's cheeks as she nodded. Yes. 1,000 times yes. Drew slipped a ring onto her finger, his own eyes wet with emotion. As he leaned across the table to kiss her, he marveled at how far they'd come. From that first tense meeting where he couldn't see past his shallow preconceptions to this moment of pure, perfect love. Later that evening, they celebrated with close friends and family at their home. As Drew watched Zola laughing with his mother, he felt a completeness he'd never imagined possible. Jason raised his glass in a toast to Drew and Zola, who proved that the best relationships aren't built on perfection, but on truth. To truth, everyone echoed. Across the room, Zola caught Drew's eye and smiled, that same confident, knowing smile that had first captivated him. She was still taking up space, still unapologetically herself, and he wouldn't have it any other way. As the party wound down, Drew and Zola slipped away to the back porch, looking out at the Atlantis skyline in the distance. A year ago, if someone had told me this would be my life, Drew mused, I would have thought they were crazy. Zola leaned against him, her engagement ring catching the soft porch light. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones we never saw coming. Drew wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. You know what my favorite part of our story is? What's that? Zola asked. That it's just beginning, Drew said, kissing her under the stars. And I can't wait to see what happens next. Zola smiled up at him, her eyes full of love and promise. Whatever it is, we'll face it together, taking up all the space we need. And in that moment, Drew knew he'd finally found what he'd been searching for all along. Not the perfect image, but the perfect reality. A love that didn't need filters or editing or careful curation. A love as real and beautiful and unapologetic as the woman in his arms. A love worth changing for. The end.